In 1816, summer just never arrived. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of this year of darkness, a global crisis that all started with one single massive event on the other side of the world. You know, during that gloomy summer of 1816, the poet Lord Byron wrote those chilling words. But here's the thing, this wasn't just some Gothic fantasy. A real, actual catastrophe was unfolding, plunging the entire planet into this mysterious twilight that left everyone who lived through it completely baffled. To really get what this was like, we're not going to start with scientists or big statistics. No, we're going to start with one family in a small town in England where this whole mystery began, not with a bang, but with this creeping, quiet sense of dread. My story, it begins in the spring of 1815. I just had my first child, but as the weeks rolled into months, this strange feeling settled over our village. The seasons, they just felt wrong. It felt like the world itself was dimming. The sun, when you could even see it, was just this pale, useless circle in the sky with no heat. And the fogs, they weren't normal country mists. They were thick and yellow, and they had this awful smell. I'd wrap my baby as tight as I could, but I had this deep, quiet fear that this foul air was seeping into his little body, just stealing his strength before he even had a chance to live. So what on earth was happening? Well, the people of Europe had no idea. They blamed everything they could think of. Sunspots, God's anger, you name it. But the real cause was an event so colossal, so violent, it was almost impossible to imagine. And it had happened half a world away. Okay, here it is. April 10th, 1815, Mount Tambora, a volcano in what we now call Indonesia, erupted. And this wasn't just any eruption. We are talking about the most powerful volcanic explosion in all of recorded history. So there's this scale called the Volcanic Explosivity Index. It goes from 0 to 8. Tambora registered a catastrophic 7. The sound of the blast was heard over 1,600 miles away. This was a true super eruption. To put this into perspective, you've probably heard of Krakatoa or Mount St. Helens. Well, Tambora ejected 4 times the amount of material as Krakatoa and 100 times that of St. Helens. The volcano literally blew its top right off. So how did one volcano in Indonesia plunge the entire northern hemisphere into a deep freeze? Well, the answer isn't on the ground. It's way, way up in the stratosphere. It's really a 3-step process. First, Tambora's massive plume blasted more than 50 million tons of sulfur dioxide gas high up into the stratosphere. Second, up there, the gas turned into tiny sulfate particles, aerosols, forming this fine, invisible veil that wrapped around the entire globe. And third, this veil acted like a giant sunshade for the planet, reflecting sunlight back into space and causing global temperatures to just plummet. And this volcanic winter kicked off a year of unbelievably bizarre and devastating weather all around the world. The human cost was just immense. You can tell just how bad it was by the grim nicknames people gave it. In America, they called it 1800 and froze to death. In Germany, it was known as the Year of the Beggar. Nobody knew what was causing it, but absolutely everyone felt the effect. Over in North America, the situation was just surreal. I mean, can you imagine waking up in June, the start of summer, to find your crops killed by a thick frost? A farmer in Vermont even noted it left this weird gray residue, which was actually the faint, settled remnants of Tambora's ash 14 months later. In Ireland, the non-stop cold and rain caused the potato crop to fail, which triggered a horrific famine. A priest wrote about families boiling grass just to have something to eat, and about children having the gray look of severe malnutrition. And make no mistake, this disaster was truly global. In India, the climate chaos made the summer monsoon fail. This led to drought and famine, and that created the perfect breeding ground for a new, deadly strain of cholera to emerge, a disease that would soon spread across the entire world. Which brings us right back to England and back to our young mother in Henbury. For her, these global events weren't some abstract thing. They were a daily, terrifying reality. The situation in the UK just spiraled. You had this chain reaction. The endless rain and cold led to total crop failure. That caused the price of bread and coal to absolutely skyrocket. Hunger turned into malnutrition, which then led to food riots. And in a weakened, desperate population, disease, especially typhus, ran wild. My days became a desperate fight for warmth. The price of coal was way more than we could afford. I'd spend hours just searching for scraps of damp wood, but it was never enough. My baby was always cold. His skin was cool to my touch. It was just this constant, gnawing worry. Simple chores became dangerous. The world was so dark, even at midday, that just a trip to the well felt treacherous. And at night, lying there in the cold, I'd listen to the coughs rattling from the houses nearby. That sound filled me with a terror that the yellow fog was more than just mist. It was a poison, slowly settling into my own child's precious lungs. And that fear was completely justified. In famine-stricken Ireland alone, the typhus epidemic that followed is estimated to have killed up to 100,000 people. You see, hunger and cold were the catalysts, but disease was the executioner. The year without a summer did eventually end, but the world it left behind was forever changed. The eruption of Mount Tambora cast a long shadow, with consequences that rippled out for decades to come. That cholera that began in Bengal, it became the first global pandemic. The gloomy, wet weather in Switzerland inspired Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein. And in the United States, thousands of families just abandoned their ruined farms in New England and headed west, accelerating the nation's expansion. Art, disease, migration, all of it shaped by a single volcano. The story of 1816 is a chilling reminder of just how fragile our global systems are. A single event, thousands of miles away, triggered a cascade of failures in climate, agriculture, and health. And it leaves us with a really critical question. In our modern, hyper-connected, and already climate-stressed world, are we prepared for what a year without a summer would look like today?